I get it, Isaiah. You talk about Bitcoin all the time. Well, as I go out and about, I continually hear the demand for, hey, I need more Bitcoin education, or I don't really understand. I hear you talking about it. I know you're passionate about it. I know you have a lot of conviction, but I need more info. And that's where Bitcoin for Vet Med really came from, was taking, hey, the 10,000, 100,000 hours of time that I've spent and distill it down into bite-sized courses and walking you through of getting a foundational why, a little bit of understanding the technical side of Bitcoin, and then how to grapple with the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and just the things that you hear throughout the media, and giving you the ability to up your Bitcoin knowledge to go from zero to hero and feel a lot more comfortable saying, okay, this is something that matters, and I want to take some of the value that I create and save into Bitcoin. So head over to bitcoinforvetmed.com or click the link in the show notes. We all know as a practice owner, one of the last things you want to think about is tax planning and strategizing for your practice. In addition, the long list of tasks on your radar, it's really hard to do everything. You have to find a trustworthy team of experts that understands the unique and specific needs within veterinary medicine. My suggestion would be my friends at Granite Peak Associates. Granite Peak is an advanced tax planning and veterinary practice advisory firm who has spent many years working within vet med. Their team works year-round to make sure you're able to maximize your profitability while also minimizing your liabilities. Whether you're in the process of purchasing a practice, looking to grow your practice, or transitioning towards the sale of your practice, they are the experts to help guide you through. What makes them different than other firms is their devotion to proactive tax planning. By thinking into the future and creating long-lasting relationships with their clients, Granite Peak can help minimize the amount of taxes paid over the course of many years to come. Head over to their website, granitepeakcpa.com, to receive a personalized comparison of your practice financials against over 140 other hospitals that they've worked with. You'll be able to see how your practice ranks, where you stack up, and where the opportunities are to get better. From there, you can schedule a one-on-one call with one of the members of their team to review and analyze your results. The opportunity speaks for itself. You need someone on your side. Granite Peak Associates is that team. Take advantage of their innovative expertise within the veterinary industry. Have you ever walked into a space and thought, wow, this place is beautiful? There's a reason for that. Architecture has this innate ability to impact emotions and perceptions. My friends at Apex Design Build bring beautiful and functional spaces for veterinarians nationwide. Apex is a fourth-generation family-run company that is fully integrated from the design, architecture, and construction process. They help you mitigate risk, eliminate surprises, save time, save money, and reduce your efforts. Sounds great. Check out their amazing work and have access to their square footage calculator to help you plan out your expansion or new build. Click the link in the show notes for the exclusive offer and learn more about Apex Design Build. All right, welcome back, and have another special guest. And it's exciting because she just returned from VMX and VetPartners, which we'll get into in just a second. But I'm here with Dr. Kelly Cooper, and she is a veterinarian, speaker, writer, and people builder. And so basically what she has done throughout her career is now led to kind of a recreation, right? But it's empowering leaders to achieve success through purpose, planning, and process. Dr. Cooper, it's great to have you here.
Thanks, Isaiah. It is fantastic to be here on your podcast today. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, we were both talking about gloomy weather. You're in Portland. I'm in Indiana. I think it's similar. We were supposed to get a bunch of ice, but it's just rainy, wet, and cold. So I was like, oh, that feels Pacific Northwest, I guess, other than we don't have the beauty of the mountains.
Yeah, I moved here in 2020 in the midst of the crazy pandemic, and summer. So winter gray is starts in October and goes through June. So it's like a good 6 months of just gray and gloom, punctuated by little moments of sunshine. But I'm a Texas girl, so it is quite a change. I'm taking lots of vitamin D to keep myself going and nutritionally balanced.
100%. So you just came back. So VMX and VetPartners would have been last week or the week before that. So like last 2 weeks. What was memorable? Any key things that were takeaways? Anything you want to share with folks that maybe weren't there?
Absolutely. So many things. So I am, somewhat new to the consulting world. And as you were, kind of introducing my bio, I kind of hear how much better I need to define, what it is I'm doing. But this is my third career jump. And so I'm building a coaching and consulting business really focused on aspiring owners, new owners. And in doing that, I'm learning the ropes of getting into coaching and consulting. So that is this Veterinary Partners is a group of industry consultants, like some pretty amazing minds and experts in the room. They meet for a few days before VMX and talk about, just what's happening in the industry, talk about, it's a lot of networking and meeting people. And so that was, about 2.5 days or so. And then VMX kicked off last Saturday. It went through Wednesday and I was there for about 5 days. So, I mean, one, Vet Partners is excuse me, just such a resource. Oh, pardon me. I picked up COVID on my trip to Vet Partners and VMX, and I'm feeling fine. And thankfully, I'm not contagious digitally, but some things are lingering from that. But anyway, to answer your question, so Veterinary Partners, for me, really just meeting some amazing people, that do what I do, that lift up the industry. So we've got some industry experts in data, in real estate, in lending, people who are watching the trends of what's going on. So there was that at a high level. I actually talked a little bit about patient safety and some of my background from Banfield. And then we also just, got to know a ton of people that are doing this work. So that was very energizing and really, really good to take that then into VMX with 26,000 attendees there. It feels like this monstrous event. So energizing. So many people there, just seeing all the veterinarians and technicians and managers that come into that meeting. Incredible CE, incredible learning, incredible opportunity. I spent a lot of my time. I did 2 wet labs, just kind of honing my surgical skills because I do still practice a few days a week to pay the bills while I'm building this business. And then I spent some time, just listening to leadership consultants and coaches talk about what they do to understand, who's doing this well and what's going on. And then the rest of my time was on the expo floor and just meeting people, learning who serves veterinarians, right, which is everybody that's there. And I actually set this challenge up for myself to because I'm an introvert at heart and I don't like selfies. So I decided to do 10 selfies and post it on LinkedIn to say, okay, I'm going to go meet a lot of people on purpose within my capacity, but then I'm going to take selfies and post it. So it was a lot of fun. So I think from just a personal development place, it was awesome, right? A really great moment. From an understanding what's happening in the industry, also just really good, good learning and knowledge. I like to stay abreast of at a high level what's happening in our industry, as well as helping, the individual mom and pop. And I think it definitely served both purposes.
Yeah, I love that. And so your background, and I want to kind of get into that. So today it's Reality Vet Consulting, right? And so you were a practice owner for 16 years in New Mexico. Then you talked about Banfield a second ago. So let's kind of stitch that all together of how you got to where you're at today. And then we can kind of pick on a couple different pieces that have been instrumental for why you're doing what you're doing today.
Sure. Well, my path, right? My path is why I'm at where I am today. So I came out of I came out of vet school and wanted to own a practice like many. I thought that was going to be the penultimate goal of being a veterinarian. And I ended up buying a practice 1 year out of school in rural New Mexico with no sense, right? No money, no sense. And I bought a practice, which I think a lot of veterinarians do today. And I didn't know how to lead people. I didn't know how to lead people. I didn't know how to run a business. I just wanted to own a practice. That's it. And I had the means to do so. So I jumped in. And so rural Southeast New Mexico, mixed animal practice. I did mix for about 5 to 6 years, decided to go small animal after a small incident with a horse, did not end well for me, and did small animal for about 10 years. And in that time, I honed my business skills, my small animal skills, my people skills, my customer service skills. And that path really led me to love the idea and work of developing others. So I had, I went from really being a horrible micromanager in my early days to ending that time as having this team around me that were incredible folks, right? Like they were totally empowered. They kind of ran the practice, and I got to work there, and leading that was really hard, but I recognized I wanted to do something else besides own a practice. And so I had an opportunity to join Banfield. I did not know it was Banfield in the moment. I just knew it was a corporate group, and there was a headhunter looking for someone, and it was a field leadership position. So I would be able to coach doctors, develop doctors, manage doctors, in Oklahoma, which is where I'd gone to vet school, Oklahoma State, go folks. And I love that, so I moved into Banfield, and we had 14 hospitals, about 35 doctors. And my role was really to lift them up and to lift those teams up and help them be their best. And so that's what drew me into corporate. And I sold my practice and went and did that. I stayed in the district space for about 5-6 years, and then I went to the regional vice president role and was there for about 2.5 years, where I led multiple markets. And then from there, I went to a divisional role, which was half the country, but there was no other half of the country leader. So I I was on stretch assignment to the entire country for about a year, and that job started right before the pandemic hit us. And so that was a year of just managing, through closures and keeping people healthy and safe and open and working and all those things. So that was really interesting. And my last year, I transitioned into a corporate project leadership role as the vice president of the veterinary affairs team, and working with under Molly McAllister. And so in that, we did a lot of work in patient safety, telemedicine, so many things, a lot around wellness plan, improvements and that kind of thing. So just a really good time there. My perspective from all of that, Isaiah, I have that small business ownership perspective, right? Being an entrepreneur in the middle of nowhere and being on your island, to being a part of this really large corporate network, of a business model and support and everything. So it's almost like the two ends of the spectrum, right? Is from one far end to the other. And then 2022, I had decided, everything has a season. And so I decided my season in corporate medicine was coming to a close, and wanted to go back out on my own, as an entrepreneur. And so that is when I started Reality Vet Coaching Consulting. So I went back to practice, went back to the front lines just to see what it was like, post COVID, and get that perspective, as an owner. I work for a little mom and pop just a few miles down the road from me. And it's been great to be there. And as I figure out how to build this coaching business.
So when you think about, the arc of a career, and it's not that it's over, right? You still have a lot of years to do whatever you want, right? From that standpoint. But there is a lot of, change, as you mentioned, like both ends of the spectrum. What were the things that you loved most about, one end and the other? Because I think a lot of times it's, hey, this is really good, this one's bad. And everyone has their own opinion, where you've seen both and you're like, hey, these were both super helpful for me.
Yeah.
And they fit for what you were looking for in life. What did you enjoy about kind of those differences that helped?
So you mean between like independent practice and corporate practice? Yeah. So independent practice, what I loved about it is just the freedom and autonomy that it brings, because it's a business that reflects your values, right? Like I had a vision of what my veterinary practice would look like, and I got to bring that to life. That's all, but it's all on me. And there's not, there's nobody else in the boat rowing with you really to make that happen. But I love the community around me. I love the small town. I was in a small town. Just how I got to, not only care for animals, but just create something that wasn't there. I got to create something. So that's what I loved there. In the corporate space, what I loved was, one was just the community of people around you. And I think that's what's really lacking for independent practice owners. Is a corporation, by definition, right, is a group of people trying to accomplish something instead of a person trying to accomplish something. So the group around me, between my peers and, colleagues and mentors and you name it, all around me, that all had a shared vision and purpose. And so we all worked towards that purpose together. And I really love that is, you got to fulfill a vision and a mission, and especially at size, that impacts an industry. And I really, really love the idea of doing something that changes who we are as a profession for the better. And so that's what I really loved about the corporate side, that, in a small setting like an independent practice, you can do that in your community, right? You do that locally and you have impact on those around you. But on, a corporate industry basis, it's a whole different ball game.
Absolutely. So, and
Yeah.
I remember when we had connected the first time we met prior to recording, you had talked about, this strength in community, and was really
Yeah.
cool. It's just like having that network of individuals that know what you're about, that you can go to, even as your role changes, their role changes, like you can stay connected, because it's all going to be still likely within vet med, but also maybe personally, right? You're going to
Yeah.
make those relationships, friendships, people that you're going to stay in touch with, that you've just bonded over time. So yeah, it is definitely important. And I think there's been attempts, whether they work or not, it kind of depends on the situation with the person. I think of it almost like, a nonprofit, right? Where you get what you get out of it. And so for a lot of independent practice owners, they may be involved in organizations or these, membership groups or these kind of masterminds. And it's like, well, you can probably get a lot out of that, but sometimes you're like, I'm just too busy and I can't do it.
No.
And you feel like you're still alone, but it's like you have to carve out that time to make those and be intentional, or you are going to feel very isolated and very alone. And I think that's a really, really good point, where in the corporate setting, you don't really have that option, right? You're probably
Yeah.
not going to be there if you just exclude yourself from everything. It's going to be pretty bad. It's going to be hard
Yeah,
time for it.
that is a lesson I learned early. That was one of my painful lessons, moving from independent ownership to the corporate network. Or I was surrounded by stakeholders, and there is a language you learn when you get into the corporate world. And a stakeholder is everybody that cares about what you're doing. They either want to provide input or it impacts them in some way. And I remember, gosh, in my first few months, I had this really great idea of improving a preventive care culture in my market. And I jumped out, had this big plan, got going, and then discovered that I needed to bring about 4 or 5 other people along with me on that plan because it impacted them. And I just didn't have that perspective, right? I didn't understand that. And so I received some feedback, that says, hey, don't get out ahead of the ship. And, the ship is big. The ship has a small rudder, and it's sometimes a little slow to move. But here's how to go about this. And so it was a moment for me. Obviously I remember it pretty well. It was about 10 and a half years ago. It was a pivotal moment when I realized that this is somewhere that you just can't go it alone. You do have to bring others with you. And while that can slow it down, there's so much more you can accomplish when you go with others. So I think about, we talk about independent practitioners, they do have resources around them, so between their VMA groups, they can, whether they belong to any kind of management groups or other, organizations like that, is if they don't prioritize that time to get the most out of that, because it's so easy to get just pulled and sucked into the day-to-day work, right? To the reaction and just get this task in front of you done, that we just tend to miss out on the value and benefit of some of those things that aren't so urgent, but they're very important. And just like that. And so you lose the benefit of community. When you lose the benefit of community, your perspective narrows significantly. You miss out on opportunities for things. There's people you don't get to know that could have helped you accomplish what you accomplished, or have already been there, ahead of you. So this is actually kind of a big speaking platform. You've kind of hit on something with me, Isaiah, that I've been thinking a lot about and writing a lot about, is the power of community. It doesn't cost anyone anything to do that. As an independent practitioner, you just have to prioritize that time. It's not a lot of time. It's just some time, which means you have to carve it out of that urgent, reactivity that gets in your face every day.
So I want to kind of rewind back to 1 year out of vet med
Yeah.
school, right? So out of Oklahoma State, you buy a practice. That probably sounds wild and crazy now, but I think there's some beauty to being naive and being like confident in yourself. And I give you credit for that. And ultimately, like being able to have confidence, I think sometimes is lacking with younger veterinarians today. Whereas in the past, maybe there was that ability, like, hey, I can do this, right? And right or wrong, and maybe it's not always the right thing, maybe it's not always the wrong thing. Having that confidence is great, but can you share a little bit about that story? Because I think part of some of your struggles there is what you're doing now to like say, hey, if you're that person, if you're me from a long time ago, I can help you make sure it's a little less stressful and a little less daunting than what I
Yeah.
walked into.
Yeah. There's a lot in that. So my background specifically that got me to that point was I guess I had, a lot of self-confidence just because of how I was raised. Like I I I had to kind of figure things out at a very young age on my own. And my parents were working a ton. I was an only child for a long time. And so even getting through college, there was a lot of resourcefulness and scrappiness that I had to, kind of pull together. And what I hear is that, graduates today don't have as much of that necessarily, from a standpoint of like college jobs and high school jobs and kind of, some of the toughing it out, and of course it doesn't apply to everybody, but in speaking to some industry leaders in these areas, that is a trend among more recent graduates is that they're coming to veterinary school not even having had their first job. And
The kids are
so
too soft. They're too soft. These
you said it,
millennials
not
are
me. Yeah. They can send you the
No, I mean,
comment.
as someone that's
It,
younger, I hear that all the time from older
yeah.
folks that, it's not the same. And I think it is a reflection on some of the people saying that. It's like, well, you are the generation that raised these individuals that maybe are
Yes, we
softer.
had it hard, so we're making it so easy for our kids, but they're not
Which
prepared.
I get that because like that should be and historically has been the idea and the concept, right? Is like I want to make life better for my kids so it's
Yeah.
easier than what I had to go through. And I
It
think it causes its own issues, right?
it
And
it
it
does.
is a huge reflection. And I hate interrupting, and I know
No,
I
you're
shouldn't
good.
interrupt you, but I'm like, this is a really big point where you do have to sometimes deal with stuff where it is failure and it does suck and it is hard. And if you've
It
never encountered that and you've been, again, you worked really hard to get into vet school and you have all the grades and you've done a lot of that hard work, but you've
yeah,
not faced some of these other challenges that are there. Yeah, it's going to make it really difficult when you go out and have your first job being in that role where you are basically thrown into the wild and said, go do it. Unless you get very fortunate and you have an awesome mentor that's going to kind of pull you under their wing.
yeah,
And I think we both
yeah.
understand within vet med that's pretty rare today. And yeah,
It
so
is. It's yeah. I mean, some of my college jobs, like Dairy Queen, retail, like those are rough jobs. Like you're kind of a nobody, and when someone hands you a toothbrush and says, "Go scrub grout," like you're gonna go scrub grout because that's what you need to get paid so you can pay for your next tank of gas.
yep.
And it's interesting because I was in, I think it was my first vet partners meeting. Stacy Purcell, she's the vet recruiter. She shared with the group that she had been speaking to one of the colleges and was one of the classes doing a presentation, and she asked the group, she says, how many of you in this room have a job right now? And I don't remember what year of school they were in, but she said one person raised their hand. And then she said, how many people have had a job before veterinary school, like had employment? And it was the same. I think the one person raised their hand. It was
Wow.
just this one person. I was like, wow, that is crazy just to think about. Like I've got a 21-year-old and I'm like shoving her into menial labor, like go get a job. Like I'm not totally funding this for you. And if you want to go do fun stuff, you're gonna have to work. And she doesn't love it. She's like, well, I think she got fired for her first job because of I don't know what, but it's like that kind of character building. I think experiences I think are important. Now, if we transition to veterinary school is really hard. It's super stressful. You're trying to meet a really high expectation of perfection in veterinary school because everybody is afraid they're going to fail the board exam. Like everybody's doing all of that to pass the board exam at the end. And the culture is, I think we can all agree, is not always healthy in professional school, what's expected and which I think kicks off a lot of the well-being issues that we have and other things. But that's like 10 other podcasts. So anyway, it's it so getting students ready for life, I think poses its own challenges. Like back to my story. And when I decided I was going to buy a veterinary practice, I had been, in veterinary school, I did a lot of leadership. So like the student AVMA symposiums, I ran Oklahoma State's symposium for like, it was a 3-year event, of having to learn how to do those kind of things. And I had done other stuff like that where I just kind of forced myself into situations that were uncomfortable on purpose, knowing that as an introvert, someone who labeled themselves as super shy, which I did, I needed to get more out of my life. And so I just, kind of pushed myself into things. So practice ownership. I went to work at a practice that was, again, in Southeast New Mexico, okay, where Texas goes like this right here. I was right there in New Mexico, and, which is where it's Carlsbad Caverns, Roswell area. It's cowboy country. It is, it's a lot of sky and not a lot of terrain, and I loved it. It was great. But I went and worked at this practice, and the doctor I went to work for, a week after I got there, he left. He was injured. He was 75 years old. He was mostly blind. He should have been practicing anymore. And the reason for that is because he had a no load practice and he couldn't sell it. And that was his nest egg. So I go to work there, not intending to buy it, but because I followed a boy, had a boyfriend out in Texas Tech. I thought that would be a great idea. And I ended up running his practice really quickly out of school, just out of necessity. And so that year of running his practice, I ended up saying I could do this, right? Like, sure. I mean, he sells practice. I like running this practice. And so I'll just buy it. So that was a pretty unique, situation, Isaiah, that I don't know a lot of people would run into. And in hindsight, if I were advising, my 27-year-old self, I'd probably say don't do it. But I did it. And because I did it, I learned just a lot of those life lessons, that I served me well today. And I wouldn't recommend it for others. If I were coaching someone deciding to make this decision, I would say, I don't know about this one. At least really know what you're getting into, which I did not, because I didn't have a coach. I didn't have advisors. I just did it. I was out by myself, and I was like, looks like a good plan. So I did it. I jumped into the fire.
I mean, there's a ton of no-low practices that I think have opportunity for someone to come in and say, there's a community here that needs help. They're willing to pay for it. Maybe not enough yet, right? But you can adjust that practice. Or do you go out and start your own thing and do a startup? And I think you just have to weigh, what am I paying for and what am I getting? Sometimes it might be, okay, I'm basically going to pay nothing for this, but maybe I'm buying a building. And the building can be something that at least gets you started, and there's a team there that can help. And maybe it's not the right team. And maybe you experience that too, where you probably don't have a lot of options in that part of the country where you can say, oh, well, Isaiah's not the best tech, so we're going to go find someone else. It's like, we got to make do with him because at least he's here right now. But for you and what you're building with the Reality Vet Consulting is for that younger veterinarian that is an owner, maybe it's you after you own for a year or two and saying, ooh, I don't know what I didn't know. And now I'm starting to encounter these issues. How do I best, solve for that? So when you think about what you're doing today, I mean, is part of it just from firsthand experience and then what you saw with Banfield? Because you do see a corporate group, a lot of times they have a lot of really good processes. They have things kind of figured out where you're not trying to reinvent the wheel when you go into, practice A to practice, Z from that standpoint.
Yeah. So kind of to back up to what you said at the beginning of that is that, so today about 30% of practices are called no-low practices. And that is a term coined to say they're either no profit or low profit. They are surviving, like they're doing fine. The owners are taking home, a paycheck to provide. But when it comes to valuation, they don't valuate very well. And so they're very hard to sell. They can be sold. People will buy them. But what I'm hearing, this is a lot of my learning from my time at VMX and VetPartners, is that there are a lot of small mom and pop practices that the consolidators did not look at because they're too small. Their location might be more remote, and they may not be making a lot of profit, but they're really great practices, right? So there's this group of practices that really have owners that really want to sell. And then we have, we're coming out, well, I don't know if we're coming out, but there's been a slowdown in some of the consolidation this last year with interest rates that I'm hearing will start picking back up again as interest rates, come down, is that it's priced a lot of people out of the market as well. So for doctors that did want to own practices, I think they felt like they can't buy them because, the multipliers drove up the cost so much, it wasn't competitive. And I'm also hearing that there's an issue with buying someone else's culture. So they are thinking, gosh, it'll be so much easier to just start my own thing and I can start it wherever I want versus having to relocate or purchase someone else's practice with their culture, which I think is short-sighted because you're also losing out on a client base, right? You're building something that already is. You can transition a culture, which you will. But just naturally, the culture is based on leadership. So you are buying a culture, but then you're changing that culture as you buy it. So what I'm really passionate about, Isaiah, is just because of my background with independent practice and understanding how hard that life can be, and then seeing, I'd say, just the abundance of corporate management, corporate practice, but with so many shortcomings also, right? I feel like, I feel like we assume it's just not a level playing field, but I think it easily can be. The benefits of corporate practice that small practices don't take advantage of are, using expertise more. I think, I think as independent practitioners, it's very easy to get in a scarcity mindset where to say, well, I can't afford a bookkeeper, I can't afford an accountant, I can't afford a consultant or a coach because it will cost me $500 a month, right? And instead, what they should be looking at is the value, right? The return on that investment that they'll get from saving time, being more focused, having expertise. And, when you're in a corporate world, all that's embedded in the corporation. All that expertise is there. All that consulting and coaching is there. When I started at Banfield and I went from hospital to hospital to go work with doctors and work with the managers there, the thing that constantly blew me away is they didn't understand the value of what they were getting because they had me on the medical side and they had a business operator on the business side. And we worked together to support those hospitals, and I think that's in a corporate, in any corporate structure, there is a field leadership component of people who are there to help you. And so what I would love to see is bringing that benefit of that network into independent practices, and that it might have a cost to it, but a lot of times it doesn't. It's even just having peers and mentors around you that will help you. And then there are ways, to get consulting. And in my vision with Reality Vet coaching and consulting is we're providing it's a coaching business, which helps you solve the problem, and a consulting business because we know the industry, right? We know the business married together in a subscription model. It's a way there. It's instead of having to pay a lot for a consultant all out of pocket, you pay as you go. It's a way to have that support and someone to help guide you wherever you're at. If you're wanting to buy a practice, if you've started a practice, or you find yourself a few years and you're like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Like, am I making the right moves? Am I making the right decisions? Having access to someone with knowledge and skill, I think, is invaluable. That can just help you find your way.
If you can improve the health of an animal, you do it, right? Of course. That's what makes veterinarians special. You're mission driven. My friends at LifeLearn are the exact same way. For over 25 years, they've been partnering with you and your peers, providing affordable, customizable, online software solutions. These solutions save time, increase efficiency, and assist in managing all aspects of operations. Why? They want to help you improve your partnership with pet owners to improve pet health. LifeLearn has award-winning digital media solutions and are leading the pack as they've prioritized having extensive veterinary knowledge throughout their teams. That difference is seen, it's heard, and it's read by thousands of people across the country. Relax, grow, and thrive with LifeLearn. Click the link in the show notes for an exclusive offer to see how LifeLearn can allow you to get back to what you do best. In the corporate setting, do you see, and I think you had mentioned this when we chatted before, just the understanding of the business model for associates of like what they're bringing to the table, what their numbers look like, how that all plays into the success or the struggles or challenges of that specific hospital. Because I think as someone that, is an associate that's looking to do their own thing, if they don't understand that within the corporate world, it's going to be even obviously more difficult for them to lead a team and leave that corporation. What was your experience just with, the amount of teams and folks you talked to across kind of the Banfield network?
Yeah, and just to make sure I'm understanding your question, Isaiah, are you talking about like how the associate succeeds in that setting?
Yeah, just like how they succeed and then what their contribution does for that specific location, right? Like
Sure.
what
It
are they doing and how the impact that they make there in that
Yeah,
specific
and
location?
and and so I love that question because I think we don't talk enough about what it means to be a really successful associate veterinarian, but I don't think that applies to corporate. I think that applies to any setting,
Sure.
right? Anywhere you work as an associate, when a hospital hires you to come work for them, what really makes you succeed? And I think for yourself and for them, and from my both worlds, from my independent world and from my corporate world, I had a lot of exposure to different doctors, and especially on the corporate side, I mean, I hired a ton of doctors and coached a ton of doctors, and there was always some very similar traits to those that were successful versus those that were not, and they're not hard, but you have to know to be intentional about those. And so, I always would say, when I'm hiring somebody, there's just three things I'm looking for when I hire someone. One is that they're self-aware, like they know themselves, so they understand what their strengths are and what their gaps are. What are the areas they're not good at. Because when you meet someone who's not self-aware at all, I remember I interviewed this one student that I had a question that I loved in my interview process was, tell me about a time you made a mistake, and then tell me what was the impact of that mistake. And I remember this one student I interviewed, she for whatever reason, she's like, huh, let me think about that for a minute. And I pause a lot. I'm really good at just pausing and waiting somebody out to answer a question. And then she finally said, she's like, well, what do you mean? I said, everybody makes mistakes. Like, just through school or even in your life, like, what's a mistake that you made and what impact did it have? And a good 5 minutes, I think, I waited her out. And then she finally like, yeah, I can't think of I can't think of anything. And it's like, well, I said, ouch, and I'm sure she was nervous, but just the fact that I mean, I can come up with 50 in a heartbeat, mistakes that I've made. And so just self awareness is understanding that, gosh, I am not perfect. And here's what I think I'm really good at. And here's like what I'm really not good at, whether you've done assessments or not. I think that's number one. Number two, you have to be coachable. And that means that somebody can give you feedback, that you will accept it and you will do something with it. And not everybody can do that. It's easy to get defensive. It's easy to take it personally, but to say, okay, I understand that you are giving me some feedback because I'm not meeting an expectation or there's something that's not fitting here. And thank you for that. And here's what I'm going to try to do differently, to meet that. So coachability is so critical. And then for the third one, it's you really have to be aligned to the mission and the vision of where you work. Like that business model, that hospital, that company, whichever. If you don't agree with how they do business or what they're about, you shouldn't go work there because you're not going to be happy. Like there's nothing that's going to change that. You can tough it out, but you're not going to stay. And when you're aligned, not only are you happier because you see yourself as a part of that, but you also promote and advance that mission, that mission and vision. So those, for me, those are the top three. I have several others, but I'll take a breath and just see what your thoughts are too.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I think it makes a ton of sense. Like, I think self awareness, I think of like emotional intelligence and being so important because, again, as we advance with technology, I think one of the key things is going to be the ability to think differently because it's not always going to be about, having, the encyclopedia up here, right? We have all these tools, but being able to read situations and communicate effectively and deal with emotions, right? And being able to understand that you might have to adapt your style of communication for who you're with in that moment and knowing the impact that that's going to make and being self-aware is obviously huge. And yeah, I would imagine the candidate that you interviewed, within 5 minutes, I feel like you got to have something, right? Think of your personal life, think about your parents or a relationship that you've had. And I'm similar to you. I'm like, definitely lots of mistakes in my life that you could draw on. But it's a great question. I actually really like that. And so for anyone listening that does hiring, I think that's a great question to kind of throw in your top handful of questions. And
Yeah, my favorite.
one other thing though is just there's kind of like the business acumen, right? So for a lot of owners, I hear this time and time again, like, hey, I was really just kind of doing my thing. I was a great doctor and we were doing fine. We were making some money. And then it's like this changed. I got into VMG,
Yeah.
or I took this course, or I hired someone that really helped me understand like my profit and loss, my numbers. And all of a sudden, it took off, because so much of it is not more medical knowledge. Everyone is more than equipped, right? You come out of vet
Right.
school, like, you are obviously very intelligent. You talked about it being really hard. It's like all these other things that aren't part of that curriculum are going to be the point that is going to say, are you a no low practice, or are you, very successful? And success, again, is nebulous, where it's like, what is your success? You don't have to be multi-location, crazy huge. Some people, that's what they want. Others are like, I want a good paycheck. I want to be able to see my family. I want to have, a family, right? And have some semblance of enjoying work and being able to go home and enjoying that time and take a vacation and save some money and not have to work forever. It's like, it doesn't have to all look the same. So I think highlighting those key things before you start is obviously huge as well.
Yeah, I wish the veterinary schools could lean into this a lot more. And because coming out of school, I kept being surprised by how much things cost. As a practice owner, in veterinary school, you're surrounded by all this stuff, all this equipment, and that's just your normal. And then when you come out and you're in business for yourself, I remember, there were things that I needed to replace or wanted to buy, or, there's to kind of develop or grow, or even just provide the basic. I mean, I bought a practice that was built in the 50s and still had a lot of the equipment from the 50s, so including an x-ray generator that was a post World War II fluoroscope that was
Nice.
not supposed to work, but it worked great. I didn't use the fluoroscope part, but every time my inspector came out, he's like, this thing's still alive. I was like, great. But when I looked at having to replace it, it's like, what, $20,000, to
Sure.
replace that. And the thing that I kept wishing is, like, if I could have learned one thing in school that I didn't learn, is understanding the business of veterinary medicine. And so it is a bit of a speaking platform for me. I'm presenting at AVMA this summer exactly about that, as basically, talking about the fact that at the end of the day, veterinary medicine is a business. So we do it for a love of caring for pets. We do it for a love of medicine. We do it for all the reasons that pull us into the profession, right? And yes, that all's true, but there's an outcome to those decisions. And the decisions are, we take a paycheck home at the end of the day, and our boss has to pay us, or we have to make payroll. We've got to pay the taxes. So there's always a dollar figure tied to that. And I'm really energized about helping doctors understand that even as an individual, they are a business, right? You are Dr. You are a business, and you are your business manager. And so and people say that doctors don't like numbers, right? That they don't want to see the data. They don't want to talk about the money. They don't like numbers. I don't know that I fully agree with that, because veterinary medicine, diagnosing a patient, requires data. It requires numbers. It is something that we do like data. We do like information. But I think because there's a tension between delivering medical quality and somebody being able to pay for it, we don't like to talk about it. That's an uncomfortable space, really. But if you come out of school and you understand, if I do these three things, my salary will be this, right? This will be the impact I have on my own life and the impact I have in the business I work in. And so and I spent a lot of time, teaching the doctors that I had, when I was in corporate, about understanding how much they got paid and why they got paid that, and how much impact they could change it. Like, here's how you change where you're at. If you're not happy with how much money you make, especially when you're in a production model environment, is okay. It's very simple. Is how many pets you see, what your average, invoice is, times your production percentage is how much money you make. And so let's back into that, and so you want to make this amount of money. That means either you are seeing more patients, or your services increase. And the way your services increase is, maybe you advance your skills and your knowledge, so you're offering different services. Perhaps you're more thorough in your client communications and how you present your treatment plans. Perhaps you partner more, with your client. Perhaps you leverage and delegate your team more, so you can be more efficient. Like, all of those behaviors end up in a more productive doctor that actually gets paid more. And I would even say that, say you're not in a production environment, but you're salaried, is when you pay attention to those numbers and you track your numbers. So you look at that type of data, is you can show your manager, your boss, say, here's the value I bring to this practice, right? Here is where I'm at. Here's my goal, where I'm headed, and here's what I think my value is. So when you're negotiating your salary, you can show, directly and in black and white, the impact that you have on the business as the revenue generator for the business. Something else I've seen is I don't think that associate veterinarians understand the power that they have in their hospitals and the impact that they make. By their choices, they can impact staffing. They can impact caseload. They can impact what types of patients they see. But often, we kind of come into it in a passive way to say, well, I'm just here. I'll do what you tell me to do, right? And whatever there is to CLC, but they don't take a proactive role in that. And every time I've seen a doctor take a very proactive role and they have goals for what they want to accomplish, they accomplish those things. And they also are the ones who tend to move into leadership, get promoted, get more development because they do.
Yeah. It's similar to, I go back to my past life as a financial advisor. It's like, well, you can spend less or you can make more net at the end of the day. That you have a couple different levers to pull, but it's not like it's just magic to make some other complicated change. These are kind of the two things you can adjust. And sometimes it's like, I can't spend less. It's like, so, okay, can you adjust how you're paid? Can you find another role? Are there these other things? Similar to kind of what you highlighted with, if you're in a production environment, it's pretty simple. I agree on the salary perspective. That's then difficult to make the case that you need to be paid more if you have no idea what your numbers are. Like, how are you going to go there and justify pushing back? Because and it's not that it needs to be adversarial. It shouldn't. It should be like, hey, we're going to pay you a fair wage. We want to take care of you. Everyone knows right now it's hard to find really great and retain, associate veterinarians. So they should be taking care of you anyways. But to go in there and have an honest, open conversation, because at the end of the day, it should be fair for all parties. You shouldn't be trying to extract something ridiculous from an income perspective from a business owner that has risks and has taxes and has bills and needs new equipment, right? That might be really old that they need to replace. And so you need to understand that as well, but you can't have that conversation if you don't know the numbers.
Yeah, you can't. And it's, knowing your impact to the business is really what that's about. So it's a lot about the numbers. It's also just, it's about the people around you, but the measurables, are the numbers. And at the end of the day, that the business that's paying you, to do your job, they're looking at that. They definitely want to know if you're paying your way. And even if you think about, with the recent increases in salaries for doctors, where doctors are getting $200,000, say you're going to get $200,000 as a new graduate, and you're going to have 4 technicians working with you. That is not a sustainable model. Like, from a business standpoint, I know that nobody's making a profit on that. So how long does it take that new graduate to produce enough revenue to pay for a $200,000 salary? It is going to take a while. And I find the associate making that salary, like, awesome. I'm excited to make that salary. I would also want to know, how is that being looked at by those that hired me? How is that being looked at by management? How long do I have to close that gap so I'm making enough to support my way? And am I at risk for not continuing to make that, or maybe not even being a viable hire? That may be scary talk, but what if someday they say, okay, well, we really can't afford you? What happens then? And I would rather not be surprised by that. It's like, all the numbers are there. The data is there. If you don't know how to access it, as on your own in the practice management software, I'm pretty sure any manager would help you find it, because they want doctors to be business savvy. The more that we're paying attention to our business, that I think that typically makes managers and owners happy, because that means you're engaged in the whole impact you have.
Even back to the stakeholder comment you made earlier, it doesn't have to be, truly in a corporate environment for that stakeholder thing. It can be in a 3-doctor practice that's privately owned, that you care enough to want to make sure, like, hey, it's viable and I'm here long term. And
Well,
it's really,
I'll tell you, Isaiah. So where I work right now, when I went to work there, I negotiated a base salary with production. And production, I thought, was pretty generous, but my employer did not love base salary, because that's not how she was paid. And there were times when I was not making enough money to make my base salary, and I knew it. The reason was the clinic was incredibly understaffed. And that's why I negotiated a base, because I knew it was understaffed, and I didn't have control of that at the time.
Sure.
But after I was there for about a year and a half, I took some time off. I changed my hours, and I came back part-time, and I let her pay me production only. I don't love it, but
Sure.
if I don't work, I don't eat. It's
Yeah.
kind of like it's a very direct. There's no safety net anymore, I guess, and that's uncomfortable. But I also know, that I need to be at work, and I need to have pretty productive days, which means I have to very much leverage the team that I'm working with, to be at
Yeah.
their best as well.
And I do think and I know it's like controversial. There's a lot of people have lots of strong opinions about compensation. I think at the end of the day, it's like, as long as there's alignment and everyone agrees on how it is and it's very
Yeah.
clear, that's honestly the main thing. Because at the end of the day, the vast majority, 99 point whatever percent of veterinarians I've ever talked to, right,
Yeah.
they care about what they're doing. It's not there to like, I'm going to try to
Yeah.
maximize how much money I make and I'm just going to do the wrong thing.
One.
That to me is not something that I have ever had like concern about, even though I know the general public sometimes likes to think that.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Yeah, it
What?
does. It requires ethics for sure. I mean, and I have encountered a couple of unethical situations where doctors were excessively production driven, like 2 out of, I don't know, 100. It's not a huge percentage, but it will exist. And if there aren't boundaries placed, and someone's not inspecting and making sure that the quality is there, that we're doing the right things for the right reasons, it does create that risk. I'd say, but as an industry, veterinarians are not production driven. Like, we're not.
Yeah.
I hear us compared to dentists all the time, where dentists are like super production driven, and veterinarians were values driven. We're driven by a desire and a passion for our career. But there is a bit of a risk to the production model, that someone might be offering services that are not needed, and maybe unethical. On the flip side, there is a risk to doctors who are on salary of not being productive, of not having skin in the game to really deliver. And I think there's other ways to balance and manage that, through feedback and assessments and whatnot. But I've seen both sides of the coin, and I've been in a lot of discussions about production versus salary only, and seen it, happen. And I'd say it might be 6 to 1, half a dozen the other, honestly.
What haven't I asked you about that you want to chat through, or it's on your heart or mind?
Oh my gosh, so many good things. How much time do we have left? About 5 minutes or
As
so?
much as you want. The long
Yeah.
format podcast is structured to be a way where we can go through a number of different things.
You know, Isaiah, the thing I was thinking about before we met today also is just helping independent practices grow. I was trying to find, what are the numbers, right? How much of the industry is independent versus corporate owned? And what I found is, so there's approximately 30,000 veterinary practices. In 2018, about 10% of those were owned by a corporate group. And now I think it's around 25% is the estimate. And but 40% of veterinarians are employed by corporations, by groups. So there are still a lot of independent practices out there. And I understand, I'd say the industry trend of consolidation. I don't think it's bad for our industry by any means. I think it brings a lot of forward thought and change to the industry that's needed in our profession. And I really want to see, how do we really encourage people to consider buying a practice. Our industry's mostly, profession's mostly women now that are coming out of veterinary school. They're coming out, and probably in their mid-30s. They have a couple of school age kids, and they're in a place where they want to start a practice. What I've been learning is that is a very doable thing, even with student debt, even with all the commitments. The financing is there, the practices are there. Is how do we encourage these young associate veterinarians to get into ownership. And that's kind of the nut I would like to crack, is helping them understand that they are pretty amazing at, where they've gotten and what they've accomplished, and having that desire to make your own way and create your own practice is very doable.
I completely agree. And I mean, I think that's part of the
Yeah.
whole concept of what this podcast has been, going back to 2019. And with that, let me ask you this, because we talked about it earlier and you mentioned that you don't believe it. And I would agree with you as well, that veterinarians don't care about the numbers. I think a really good study and detailed analysis of showing, as an associate, with assumptions, right? This is kind of what life could look like versus as an owner. Again, there's going to be so many assumptions, so many different things that are there. But to lay out the case
Yeah.
for ownership and do something that was really, I think, thoughtful and detailed would make a huge difference that would be widely shared. And so, I'll throw it out there. Anyone wants to create it, I'll share it. I've talked about doing it. I just haven't had the time, candidly. Like, we'll get there.
Yeah.
But
We'll put our
I
heads
think it needs to
together.
be done. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it needs to be done for sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I do. I think we need the vision and inspiration for ownership. It's there's a lot of support for independent practices. I feel like people assume that you can't be an independent practice owner anymore, or that they don't want to work for corporations. They want to do their own thing. And there's this term that I heard recently called the corporate refugee. I did work for a corporation, and now I want to do my own thing. I definitely think there's need for guidance to help pull, or I like to use the term woo associates into that ownership space where, yes, you absolutely can do this. And here's how you do it, like, successfully. It's not just like hanging on by your fingernails, but do it in a way that the corporations know how to do it, with expertise, with support, with a community, with business savvy. And these aren't hard lessons to learn, but it's something that you just have to kind of acquire, as you go along the way, so that you're paying attention to the skill set of running a business, which is a different skill set than being a veterinarian. And that you can hone that in a way that your practice isn't just a practice you own and just feeds your family, but it's a practice that is high profit. You can, if you're like, I'm retiring in 15 years, I'm going to sell that bad boy and then go vacation. I do feel that there's a vision for that, and would love, I got to sit down and think about how to craft that message. And if you want to help me, I'll,
yeah,
I'll
I'm
do it with you.
open to it. Yeah, I'm open to it. So we'll tell everyone we're going to do it, and then that, I guess, holds us
Yeah,
accountable that now we have to do it,
that's
right?
right. We'll have to hold accountable. We just
Yeah,
won't put a timeline on that yet, Isaiah.
exactly. I was like, this is the key. Like, it's going to get done. Just don't tell me
That's
it has
right.
to be in a certain time frame.
That's right.
What's a non-consensus view that you hold within veterinary medicine that maybe your peers haven't, that has either changed, or one that you've held for a long time?
That's a hard question. You didn't prepare me for that. A non-consensus view.
Yeah. Something that if you ask, let's say, 10 veterinarians, over half of them would say, yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. Is there
I don't
anything?
know if I have a great answer for that. I had to think about that one for a long time, Isaiah, because I have a lot of opinions, of course, as does everybody. But when I think of, I'm just such a mainstream kind of person. Like, I try to be super open-minded to lots of views. And so
Sure.
taking strong stances for me is hard. Okay, here's a viewpoint I have, having dabbled in the telemedicine space, is that I do see telemedicine as a great opportunity for providing better access to care. But I do not think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be in and of itself a super successful business model, except for driving patients into veterinary hospitals. Like, that's kind of in the
Yeah.
space that
It's
I've
not a
held.
standalone thing.
Yeah, it's not a like in the way the world exists today, it is not a standalone model. It is a great doorway to getting patients to a veterinary hospital. Until we really figure out, can we truly comfortably and safely diagnose a patient with a condition, treat it, and it be successful. At this point, it's really, and we're going to try, we're going to find out, right? We got different states allowing telemedicine to happen. So there's definitely a playground for that. But it's, I think it's a great ad for clients that you already have to give them access to care for follow-up and check-ins in between things. But right now I'm not quite in the camp of telemedicine's going to be the solve that a lot of people think it's going to be. And I might be wrong, but that's okay.
Yeah. I think with anything, you have to go with it where, hey, if presented with new information and you can show me why this is different than what I have said, great, cool.
Yeah.
Let's adapt to that new information. And I've said it many times, but that's a sign of intelligence, right? So it's okay to change your mind.
That's right.
Question for me. So I let every guest that listens to the show or comes on the show, I pepper them, obviously. Same with you, right? Like, here's questions that I have.
Yeah.
I want to ask you. Anything for
Yeah.
me that you want to ask? And it can be related to what we talked about. It can be completely unrelated. Anything that you want to fire back my way?
Yeah. Well, in looking at all the guests that you have, the guests that you have in your show, and so many different perspectives and viewpoints that come through, you have a really good vision of of what's happening, what people are talking about in the industry. So, what do you think is our biggest challenge in veterinary medicine today?
It's a great question. It's extremely hard to answer, but I think I would go back to something similar to what you talked about with the like encouraging young veterinarians. I think confidence is
Mhm.
something that is maybe lacking. And I've heard it a couple times from different folks, young veterinarians that want to refer everything out. They don't want to do it. Where, if you talk to someone that maybe has done it for, decade plus, they kind of learn by doing and they're much more proficient to take on more complexity. And I think the nervousness is everything has to go to a specialist and, a GP doesn't want to touch so many different things and they're kind of told don't do it because they're worried that they're going to get sued or they're going to have to get, drawn into, a situation where maybe they're going to regret, they're going to make a mistake. And right, there are costs to those mistakes today, not just dollars and cents, but the pets that you're responsible for. And I
Mhm.
get that that is a heavy burden sometimes to carry. But I think having confidence in encouraging and saying, hey, you're an awesome veterinarian. I trust you to do this. You're going to make mistakes and that's
Yeah.
okay. We're here to back you up. We got your back, right? Or, hey, you're not going to ever know everything. You can read every book, talk to every consultant, listen to every podcast, and be 75 years old and still not have enough knowledge to go start a hospital. Versus if you would have done it, a couple years out of school, sure, you're going to make a ton of mistakes. You're probably going to blow some money. You're going to do dumb things. But you know what? You'll
Yeah.
learn a lot more just by doing than by trying to read. And so to me, that's what I continue to kind of hear. So I love the stat of the 40% of veterinarians are within corporate groups. And I think if I'm a corporate group, it's how do I get my skill set of my doctors up so they're willing to do more? Because I think ultimately their goal, right, it's profit driven at the top end, which it should be, a mix of doing the right thing and then also making a profit. The same way on the private practice side. Like I believe you can do well financially and do well by taking good care. And like that is how a lot of businesses operate. And you shouldn't be afraid to make money. But I would say, yeah, the one word is confidence, like giving people confidence to go do things. And
Yeah.
especially, and I don't know if it's a generational thing. I don't know if it's the shift of, more women. I've met a ton of women that are super confident at young ages that they're going to go crush it and have, multi practices and grow. And I know they will, right? But I think more people need to have that confidence in themselves to do it. So I guess that's my answer is confidence.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. I've seen that. I've seen that a lot, and that's not an easy solve, right? Because
Yeah.
creating
It's
that
easy to say.
confidence and creating confidence and competence someone, I believe obviously starts in youth, but in veterinary schools, redefining how we communicate and develop professionals to come out of school. I
Yeah.
don't feel like human medicine has the same problem. I feel like human medicine, has a more cultural development of a professionalism that we don't have. And it's, it'd be really interesting, I guess, from a sociology perspective, to kind of understand the differences there so that there
Yeah.
is more confidence.
In the joke earlier, and I always take notes when I do podcasts so I can come back to stuff. I made the joke about the kids being soft, right? And I say kids,
Yeah.
very, very, as a joke, right? Because a lot of times I'm not that much older than a lot of people coming out of vet school at the moment. Although I am 34, I am getting older. And so from the standpoint of the selection process of who gets into vet school, like if you have someone that's never worked a job versus the person that has had to have grit and grind to put themselves through undergrad. Maybe their grades aren't as good. Maybe they're going to struggle a little bit more, but are they going to be a better veterinarian when they're out practicing versus are they
Yeah.
the better student going through 4 years? And I think
Yeah.
that's a question that it's not an original Isaiah. Again, a lot of the things that I say in this podcast is just absorbing content from others
Sure.
and kind of cycling it through the way that I think. But a handful of other people have made this comment, and I completely agree with it. I think the selection process might actually be broken for who gets into vet school.
Yeah,
And I
I
think
agree.
maybe you solve some of these issues if you solve who is going through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's, that, and often if we're hiring practitioners, if we're hiring academicians, if we're hiring researchers, it's different. It's a different skill set, but the majority of veterinary schools produce practitioners. It seems like often they're training researchers and academicians. And, in the selection process, it is a lot different to consider who will be successful as a practitioner versus who will be successful as a researcher, because they're different, different behaviors and different skill sets. And, I think, and no, this could be such a big conversation also is, we, what am I looking for here is, okay, what gets measured is what gets done, right? So kind of a standard phrase. I used to use it all the time. So for veterinary school, what gets measured is the national board exam, right? So that's when you go and you talk to students and you ask them what they're focusing on. They're focusing on passing the next test. That's their complete focus. And the next test is what will get them to the board exam. So that doesn't also build the skill sets that students really need when they come out to practice. That doesn't build communication skills. It doesn't build teamwork. It doesn't build delegation. It doesn't build business. It doesn't build business acumen. And so combining who gets into school, what kind of life experiences you have, and then really looking at curriculums where it creates a more well-rounded practitioner is someone who is specifically practitioner. And, I think that means that how boards are developed, board exams are developed would have to change as well. Like how a student is measured as being successful would have to change, because how you're measured as successful to get out of veterinary school is not at all the same way you're measured as successful once you hit the door day one as an associate doctor.
I think it'd be really interesting. And again, this is another project. I'm not going to volunteer for this one because I don't know how you do get the numbers. So looking at class rank, test scores, and then personality types for who's owner, who stays associates, and and then the nebulous, how are you defining success, right? The successful practice owner, right? Whatever criteria you put around that. And then seeing what that all looks like, I think would be a fabulous, interesting study. And I know VMA has their kind of economic summit. If they could create something, and shout out to anyone that has connections there, they should try to undertake this of having some way of measuring a couple of those things for who is then selecting to go into ownership or how do they do this. And again, your point is really good, because that was one thing, again, my mind wasn't thinking of it. Not everyone's going to be a practitioner. And so you need different kinds, but it's so each class, right? There's this smaller group that's going to be accepted, right? There might be more people that want to get in, but they're not going to get accepted. So how do you ensure that you have all the different kinds that are going to make the industry, the community as a whole successful? Because you need more than just one type.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about just the model of veterinary medicine as a whole, is we are raising up veterinarians to serve many purposes. So if you think about practitioners, academia, public health, the military, all the different things veterinarians do from different fields. But then even in the practitioner space, think about food animal, equine, small animal, exotics, is that, I feel, and that you asked me about consensus view. I don't know if this is it or not. I'm a non-consensus view. I feel like we are the exact same profession we were when James Herriot was writing books about being a veterinarian. And that's, what drew me into veterinary medicine, is we are still training veterinarians to be all things to all people. And when, you're trying to be, I'm sure there's a quote or a phrase for this, right? But you're trying to be great at everything, you kind of just end up mediocre at at all of it. And instead of really honed in on what you're going to be good at. And, in school, you have to learn 7 species of animals. You have to spend time, I had to study a lot of stuff about pigs and never practiced on a pig in my life. And there's, I know some schools track a little bit more to help with that, but we are, trying to broad brush this, all avenues through one curriculum, and then everybody picks their path after that. And it's you know I wonder, how does this industry ever change if we don't change there, really, at the foundations of how we do what we do.
I think that's a great place to kind of tie it up. From there, put a bow on it, right? How can people connect with you? Where online would you send them? Are you
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, website, all that stuff? If you want to plug it, I'll make
Yeah.
sure to
So
notes too.
yeah, so Reality Vet Coaching and Consulting, and you can find us at that website. So Reality Vet Coaching Consulting, where we have a website there. I am on Facebook. I am on LinkedIn. I'm also on LinkedIn as just Dr. Kelly Cooper. Easy to find there. And then on Instagram, you will find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for carving out time and sharing what you did today. This was a great conversation. And as always, I learn stuff each time we go through this. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isaiah. It's been quite a journey. I've enjoyed this hour and talking to you.
Finding a job or finding a veterinarian shouldn't be a waste of time. Enter an Offer First. Paul Diaz and team have created something really special with Offer First. Some of my favorite reasons are as follows. Candidates and employers will both have values aligned on the first step, not the last. The sign-up process quick and simple, no resume required. So if you're looking for a job but you aren't really sure, it's as easy as scrolling on Zillow for a home. And finally, if you have a great match, it's based on your each unique requirements, not random keywords. If you want to learn more, listen to episode 179 with Paul Diaz. We cover all of that. The other exclusive great thing that you're going to get from this ad read and from Paul is I convinced him to give an exclusive discount to listeners of this podcast. So for owners, you're getting a 20% discount on both the placement of any candidate, but also access to the platform. Use VSP if you go to Offer First, or the easiest way is a link in the show notes. So check it out. Associates, those looking for a job, same thing. Use the link in the show notes. Use VSP if you go directly to Offer First. But I will donate and Paul will donate to a veterinary nonprofit of your choosing. So each person that signs up gets a vote. Your votes actually count, which is incredible. And so I'll be reaching out. I will handle that. But there's going to be a donation made for any associate or any job seeker that adds on the platform. We want to make sure that not only does the platform help to make sure that you find a better fit, better culture, better role, but it's also doing good in veterinary medicine. Okay, so link in the show notes is going to take you to Offer First. It's going to automatically apply that, but also use code VSP if you go to Offer First directly. And Offer First is changing the game of veterinary recruiting. I want each and every one of you to benefit from it, so check them out today. Find out for yourself why Shepherd Veterinary Software is the nation's fastest growing practice management software. Why, you ask? Isaiah's reason: Shepherd is innovating and will continue to do so into the future. Founded by Dr. Cindy Barnes, Shepherd is intuitive, super easy to learn, and streamlines practice management. Built for vets, by vets. It works for you and your team, so you have more time to spend on what's most important, your patients. Shepherd automatically updates the medical records, adds services to the invoice, generates discard instructions, and so much more. Bring home more stories and less stress. Grow your practice. Check them out at Shepherd Vet. That is www.shepherd.vet. All right, so there are a lot of great job postings that I want to get to. And so we're going to start off with Bayside Hospital for Animals. Great work-life balance in beautiful Fort Walton Beach, Florida. No weekends, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, no on-call or emergencies. It's an appointment only here. Currently a 2.5 doctor practice, new owner in 2021, bringing some fresh life into the hospital. The new owner had been there for 6 years prior working, so definitely understands the team, the processes, and the community. Lots of investment in people and new equipment. ProSal is the pay structure. Far too many benefits for me to list. Email BaysideVet251 at Yahoo or call 850-864-1857. Join a thriving, growing Small animal practice in Vermont on the Quebec border, full-time ideal, part-time is considered. The idea is to start with yes with the team, patients, and clients in outdoorsman or outdoor woman's paradise while being able to practice high-quality medicine. Compensation is write your own structure within production capabilities. Literally, it is the owner wants to find the right person and is happy to negotiate, chat through, and find the right fit. If you want autonomy and a boss that enjoys teaching, reach out to Newport Veterinary Hospital. You can email newportveterinaryhospital@gmail.com. North Central Indiana, looking for an oasis in the chaos. Who isn't, right? Come join the amazing team at Fulton County Veterinary Clinic. They strive to foster a fun, fast-paced work environment while providing quality patient care. They utilize the support staff efficiently so that the doctor is available to practice medicine and do what you're trained to do in less time and paperwork, which is great. Lots of investment in new equipment and technology to support you, full-time or part-time available. Small animal and exotics are both seen there, so no ER, no on-call, no weekends, competitive salary with sign-on bonus offered, and far too many benefits to list. Go to Fulton County Veterinary Clinic. So type that in and you'll find the job posting there. Last but not least, join Watertown Animal Hospital. Personable small animal veterinarian wanted for well-established current 5-doctor mixed animal practice in northern New York, which is an outdoors person's paradise. Again, 2 of those. So if you like the outdoors, you can look at Vermont or New York. They have plenty of support staff with 6 CSRs, 6 licensed technicians, 4 animal caretakers, 2 technical assistants, a hospital assistant, a practice manager, and a bookkeeper. Focuses on mentorship and investment on the people and the technology. That's been a strategic initiative by the leadership team. No on-call, 24-hour ER less than an hour away. Salary based on experience, but no less than $95,000. Can be straight salary, pro sal considered. Want to discuss that with the right person. Tons of benefits. Again, too much to list. Please reach out to watertownpetcare.com for that option as well. So again, if you find a role or a job or talk to anyone and it helps you in any way, I would love to hear that feedback. So please reach out. Let me know what you're able to do. And I will continue to post these. So if you are an owner, reach out to me, let me know. And we'll go from there. And until I hit a capacity of I can't keep recording these, I want to let people know who are high quality owners around the country looking for great help. So with that, we'll talk soon. Thanks for listening to today's show. The comments made on today's show should not be taken as investment, tax, or legal advice. All comments are for educational purposes only. You should talk to your professional team before implementing anything. If you want or need financial advice, my day job on Not Podcasting is helping veterinarians grow their net worth. Our team is taking new clients, and we are ready to talk to you at any stage of life. Come as you are. I always say bring the mess, right? Like if things are unorganized, that's okay. There's no prerequisites to become a client. Isaiah Douglas is a partner at Vincier Wealth Management. Isaiah is a registered investment advisor, registered with the SEC. The biggest compliment you can give me in the podcast is to share it with a friend. Reviews help the show get found, and Apple Podcast is the platform that is predominantly used for people listening to the show. If you have 3 minutes, love the show, head over to Apple Podcasts, give us an honest rating and review. It helps more people find the show. Also, the new YouTube channel is up, and I'd love to have you subscribe. Vainly, I want 100 subscribers at least. Lots more, obviously, right? But I get a vanity URL if we get to 100. That would be great. It makes it easier to find the YouTube channel as well. For all of today's links, information, head over to the veterinariansuccesspodcast.com. There you can subscribe to your favorite podcasting platform. It'll be a link to that YouTube channel I just talked about. You won't miss any other episodes, whether you listen on Spotify, whether you have some other ancillary podcast platform. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff. It certainly does help. I appreciate it. Finally, if you want more information, insights, want your voice to be heard, want to share ideas for content, say, hey, Isaiah, I want you to have this guest. I want you to talk about this topic. Go over to the Facebook group. So you can search for the Veterinarian Success Podcast on Facebook or head over to veterinariansuccesspodcast.com, scroll to the bottom about your host, click on the Facebook icon, and that'll get you in the group. But thank you so much for listening. It means a lot to me to be able to see the podcast grow and continue to impact people. So with that, until next time, we'll chat soon.